Hello and welcome to this course on Introduction to Data Security and Anonymization in Open Data Projects. In many organizations, open data is seen mainly as a publication task. But in practice, responsible publication starts much earlier. Teams need to protect working data, understand identification risks, and make careful decisions about what can be published openly, what should be aggregated, and what should not be released at all. This course is designed to help you navigate those decisions in a practical and accessible way. This course was developed in the context of the Dorsey project, which supports open data development in Central Europe. The wider goal is not simply to publish more data, but to support better data practices, better quality, better reuse, and more responsible publication. That is exactly where data security and anonymization comes in. This course is intended for a broad professional audience. You may work in a municipality, a public authority, an open data team, or an organization that supports innovation and data reuse. You do not need to be a lawyer, a privacy specialist, or a data engineer. What matters most is that you are involved in preparing, reviewing, managing, or publishing data. To make that role clearer, it helps to state what you should be able to do after this lesson and after the course as a whole. In this course, we will not go deeply into legal interpretation or advanced mathematical privacy models. Instead, we focus on practical understanding. You will learn how to think about identifiability, why security and anonymization solve different problems, and how teams can make more responsible release decisions. Before we get into the substance, a few practical notes will help set expectations. The course follows a practical sequence. We begin with the basic distinction between value, risk, security, and anonymization. From there, later sections look more closely at identifiability, legal and governance context, security basics, and anonymization methods. After the first lesson, you will be able to understand why open data creates both value and risk, and distinguish the concepts data security, anonymization, and pseudonymization. While we have these lessons, you can still move through this course at your own pace and return to sections whenever useful. There are quizzes and short activities to help you think through real publication decisions. At the same time, this course is not a substitute for legal advice, a formal data protection assessment, or internal approval procedures. It is a practical learning resource for better decision making. With that in mind, the first question is simple. Why does this topic matter so much in open data work? Open data matters because it can create real public value. It can make public action more transparent, support research, enable innovation, and allow information to be reused in ways that public bodies may not have anticipated themselves. That is why many European and national policy frameworks encourage greater data sharing and reuse. But the fact that data is useful does not mean that every dataset is safe to be published openly. A dataset may be highly useful and still be risky. Public sector data can contain personal or sensitive information directly, or it can reveal it indirectly. Risk often increases when data is highly detailed, relates to small populations, or can be combined with other available information. So, responsible open data work is not only about opening data, it is also about judging when openness needs limits. That means open data teams usually carry two main responsibilities. On the one hand, open data teams are asked to publish data, but they also have to make sure that publication is responsible. That means balancing two things at once. One is enabling reuse, making data useful for transparency, innovation, research, and better services. The other is reducing risk, protecting people, handling working data securely, and avoiding harmful disclosure. Once you see that balance, an important distinction becomes easier to understand. Data security and anonymization are closely related, but they are not the same thing. They are both important, but they do solve different problems. This distinction is central to the whole course. Data security is about controlling access and protecting information while teams work with it and release it. Pseudonymization, for example, removes or replaces direct identifiers, but the data may still relate to identifiable individuals. Anonymization goes further. The aim is that individuals are no longer reasonably identifiable in the published data. These are different concepts, and confusing them often leads to poor decisions. One of the most common mistakes is assuming that deleting names already solves the problem. If anonymization is about what the release data can reveal, the next question is what security actually covers in practice. Internal data security is about protecting data while teams still work with the original data set. At this stage, the data may still contain personal or otherwise identifiable information. So, access needs to be controlled carefully. This includes secure storage, safe transfer, restricted access, and least privilege. In open data work, that matters because cleaning, review, and risk assessment usually happen before publication. All of that should happen in a protected environment. That protection does not stop inside the organization. It also matters at the moment of release. Because security also has a publication-facing side. Once a dataset is ready for release, teams need to make sure the correct version is uploaded, access settings are correct, and the portal environment is configured safely. This reduces risks such as wrong uploads, exposed links, misconfiguration, or unauthorized changes. So external security protects the release process and the platform environment. But even if that process is handled well, the content of the dataset may still create privacy risks. And that is exactly why security and anonymization should not be treated as interchangeable. We have now seen that security and anonymization are both necessary in open data projects, but they do different work. Security protects data throughout the workflow, while teams handle raw data, review files, manage access, and prepare publication. It reduces risks such as wrong uploads, exposed files, and incorrect permissions. Anonymization, on the other hand, addresses a different question: whether the content of the release data can still reveal identities directly or indirectly. That matters especially before a dataset is published openly. That distinction becomes easier to grasp when we look at one of the most common misconceptions in practice. Removing names does not necessarily remove identifiability. Here, the names are gone, but the records may still point to real people. That is because identifiability can remain in this case in the combination of age, location, and condition. In a small local context, even a single unusual record may be enough to reveal someone. So, anonymization is not only about removing names, it is about whether people can still be identified in context. That being said, data security has not been handled here yet. What looks simple in a small example becomes even more striking in a real case. We are looking at the Netflix price dataset. In 2006, Netflix released a large dataset as part of a public competition to improve its movie recommendation system. The challenge offered a prize of $1 million for an algorithm that could significantly improve recommendation accuracy. To protect its users, Netflix removed names and replaced them with numeric IDs so that the individual rating histories could still be analyzed without directly showing identity. At first glance, this may have looked like anonymous data, but the story did not end there. Because just a short time later, researchers showed that some Netflix users could be re-identified by linking parts of the dataset with publicly available IMDb ratings. The key point is that the names were not needed at all. What made re-identification possible were distinctive behavior patterns and the availability of outside information. This is why the case became so influential. It showed that data can look anonymized and still remain linkable. That lesson applies far beyond movie ratings. The Netflix case is not only about entertainment data. The same logic can apply in public sector datasets, mobility data, local service use records, health-related information, and many other settings. Once records are unique enough and once outside information exists, re-identification becomes possible. That is why responsible publication depends on context, not only on a checklist of deleted fields. This brings us back to the practical mindset that Open Data team. This first lesson sets the foundation for the rest of the course. Open data can create important public value, but releasing data responsible requires more than good intentions. Security protects data while teams work within. Anonymization helps reduce identification risks in what is released. And throughout the process, the central question remains the same. Can people still be identified, directly or indirectly? And that is exactly what we will examine in the next lesson.